Hi guys, and welcome along to Sonic Academy with me, Chris. Today I'm joined by none other than Nick Bracegirdle, aka Chicane. Thank you for joining us, Nick. How are you?
Good morning, Christopher. Long time.
long time. Today I am joined by the world famous Thrillseekers. That is Steve Helstrip. To those in the know, Steve, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's going to be an interesting conversation.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are doing Classic Balearic here at Sonic Academy this month. Takeover. So, when I say Classic Balearic to you, what does it mean to you? Like you guys were at the heart of that 96, 7, 8 scene. What does it mean to you?
I guess it does mean Cafe Del Mar, really, and walking around between Mambo's and Cafe Del Mar. Pikes, same sort of thing, going up to Pikes and listening to some of the DJs there during the day. That was always fun. And just
so, were you out there as a punter? You weren't out there for
punter first. Punter? Yeah. I had the opportunity to go in summer of '93 with some friends, and it was a really dumb thing to do because it's the last money I had in my entire world. I think the third thing we did was stumble into space about 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. I stumbled out to the terrace and Carl Cox was playing, I think, probably. And as soon as I saw that terrace, I thought, wow, this is what Ibiza's about. This is what I came here for. So like we'd been out to Privilege and a few other things. It was Coup Club then, a couple other nights. Yeah. But as soon as I saw that whole Sunday vibe at Cafe Del Mar, that was Space on the Terrace on Sunday. That's what I think of as Balearic Ibiza. That and Cafe Del Mar.
For me, it kind of began with Chicane's Offshore. I used to work for a computer games company doing soundtracks. We had a great little studio, so I kind of learned to cut my teeth really there with all the equipment. And of course, we used to go raving, we used to go to Terminals and all this Ministry Sound Gatecrasher. And then, we'd listen to Pete Tong's Essential Selection and, I'd listen to the music and I was into it, but it wasn't like, life-changing. And then Chicane's Offshore came and I was like, what the hell is that? Changed my life completely. Went down to W.H. Smith's, which is one of my local record stores. Had to buy it, listened to it like 50 times on repeat. I thought, that's what I want to do. And that's how it all became kind of a thing for me. So that's what I would define as Balearic Classic Trance. That's my definition.
Myself, I've already told you that I remember the very moment I heard Offshore, driving back from studio on a really dark night, and we pulled over to the side of the road and just sat there and listened. Thrillseeker said the same. He said it was just like an epiphany. Take us back to those days. I was doing a bit of research before it came on air. Yeah. It was originally called Chicane Offshore EP. So there was a couple of iterations of Offshore before we got to 1997.
Yeah. Chicane was meant to be really a predominantly down-tempo, emotive kind of project. So we did an EP with the Offshore EP, which had a track called Victoria, Offshore, something else, and a rather strangely titled Old Man Chode on it, right?
Okay, right.
Sure. So we did that, and we started getting rave reviews about. So this is the original down-tempo breakbeaty kind of Offshore, right? Sasha and Diggers were trying to loop it and play it with a 4/4 drum in their club nights, and that was like, oh, okay. I can remember the very spot where I was. I live on the Isle of Wight, by the way, and I was sat in a Fiesta XR2, which was my car at the time, in a town on the south side of the island called Ventnor, and I was sat on a car park on a hill, and I'm playing the record, and I went, okay, I need to do a dance version of this, and I did a Disco Citizens remix of that record. And I worked out how I was going to do it. It's just sat there, and I know the very spot. And funny enough, I walked past it a couple of weeks ago, and I went, "That's where this all started." And
yeah.
So I did that record, and then we sent it out, and then things went a bit bananas.
You come back to the UK, and then you start. Were you intentionally making music for the island, or what, when you were doing all those sort of records?
No, because what they were playing in Ibiza then it was just house music. Okay, so
Yeah.
proper Balearic house. Trance didn't exist. I was staying at Pike's, funny enough, when it wasn't ridiculously expensive, and I'd made a track called "Feel It" with a friend of mine, on which we ended up releasing on Cheeky Records, but under the name of Hilux, right? And
Yeah.
we hadn't got it signed. And the last, talk about sliding doors moment, after I got back from space, I wandered into Pike's. It was the last day of my holiday, and my two mates said, "What are you going to do when you get back to to London?" I said, "I don't know, get a job, I suppose. I've literally got no money." And as we sort of sat down with the sun loungers, just sort of taking it easy before we settled back off to the UK, a guy next to me turned around to me and said, because I'd been talking about house music and stuff and these tunes I've been making, and the guy turned to me next to me. He goes, "Did I hear you say you make like house music?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, give me a call when you get back to London." He gave me a card, and it was Mel Medalley from Champion Records, the owner of Champion. Just a complete coincidence. It was his last day of his holiday. He was literally on the sunbed next to me. So I didn't think anything of it. I thought, okay. So got back to London, had this tune finished, drove down to Champion to go and see him. Met Johnny Walker and Rollo and Mel, and they signed the record.
So before you were sort of in and out of dance music, but it wasn't changing your life. You wasn't going, "This is what I'm going to do," until that record.
Well, I was in a boy band doing kind of pop music. So I was with ZTT. So Trevor Horn's label back in the early 90s.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So
wow, right.
I was listening to Dream and
Are you the Robbie Williams of dance music?
I don't have the money that he does. So
you weren't front and center on stage.
We were like we were both massive.
This is amazing.
This is true. Yeah. So we were kind of like a Depeche Mode, Erasure kind of wannabe. I did all the music on the keyboards. Obviously, electronic music and Depeche Mode was my thing. That's where I came from. That's what I was all about. But I was obviously listening to, D-Ream, Entrance, all these names, listening to Sasha and the early, sets that we were knocking about online. Well, I say online, but most of the radio that our friends would share. So I was obviously very aware of dance music, but mostly through Radio 1's Essential Mix, Pete Tong. And then, like I say, it wasn't really until Chicane's Offshore I thought, right, this is absolutely what I'm going to do. This is to really get what this is about. It really connects with me. So that's where it all started. Yeah. So the next track I wrote was a track called Synaesthesia straight after that. So that's how it all kind of started for me.
Right. We were on tour with doing a Ministry of Sound tour around the UK university scene. And with us on the tour was Paul Oakenfold. So this was 1993, right? So every night after we did our kind of warm-up, which is about a 30-minute set of live music, so I had like live sequencers, live keyboards, and Ricky was singing, and we had a guitarist with us. We'd listen to like 2 hours of Hooky banging out what he had brought back from Goa with him. So he's playing Quench, like Dreams, OT Quartet. He'd got a slate of that from Rollo, so really early slate. It was basically trance that I've never heard, all jam and spoon and stuff like that. So that was 93. And then, so when I was making the Hilux stuff, when I heard that he was going to be, did this Essential Mix, I said to my girlfriend at the time, look, I'm going to record this. I'm going to get the DAT out of the studio, the DAT machine, plug it into the hi-fi and record the Goa mix, which I did. And that was on, as I remember, that was kind of New Year's Eve, 93 to 4. Anyway, the next day, after I heard that, it's like, right, the first thing I wrote after that was the backing track for I Am, the Chakra Records. And that was totally inspired by the whole Goa mix thing. And that was the start of it, and the start of the Space Brothers.
My modus operandi, or what I like, is this kind of melancholy, emotive thing melded with dance floor kind of know-how. Offshore in particular, more than anything. As songwriters and producers, sometimes it's very difficult to capture how you're feeling and put it into a medium. I used to have a phrase in the early days of recording was there's what you want and then there's what you get. Mm-hmm. Now, Offshore was a record which was all about me being the last kid on the beach on the Isle of Wight. My mum and dad were teachers, and it was like September and it was getting cold. And I remember this feeling of being, the summer had ended, and right. It was melancholic and I tried to put that into the record. And And that comes in the form of the repeated guitar, Roland guitar riff, which stays.
I want to stop you there. The Roland guitar. Now, we have spent 2, possibly 3 days going through every single Roland bloody guitar from pre-97 to try and get this. Is there a live guitar in there?
No.
No. So it is a pure. Do you know the preset? Is it a couple of presets? Is it one preset?
One preset.
One preset. Is it from? What's it? It's not from the S70.
It's the S750 library.
It is from the S750 library. Do you know the preset name? Because we know the strings. You have stated that the strings are from the S7. Right? Everyone's got that. No, there's no information on the internet about the guitar. Ding ding.
Really?
None. I've asked. I know this guy in a chat group with BT and stuff, and he's obsessed about finding. He can't find it. He doesn't know what it is, and he knows everything.
I'll tell you off camera.
Okay. Right. Well, I had a project.
The only other guy I know that has not revealed the sound source is Rich Solarstone for his guitar.
I have an email from Rich Solarstone talking about 7 Cities. Says, I'm never telling anybody. And I was going, come on. He's like, no, I'm not telling. And I tell everyone. I go, look, it was. Do you know what's really bizarre? I was going through a JV 2080, one of the El Nino riff, Everyday riff, and a record we put out beforehand.
Yeah.
Was the same preset.
Well, what I will say is that what I did to the preset,
there's a note harmony thing going on. There's some sort of harmony thing.
The reason you probably can't find it is it sounds like a lot of other things, but as it appears in the preset, it sounds very fucking in your face. The velocities were brought right down.
Right.
And then the sound appears.
Because it sounds like the opposite. It sounds like it's full velocity to give you that real twang, that real ting, ding.
No, if you listen to the original, it opens up a bit.
Right.
It opens up a bit and it starts to get close to the full velocity of the sound. So it wasn't. We didn't use a filter. It was the velocity sensitivity of the Roland sound, and that's how it comes.
And was that opening and closing the filter? So play it less, the filter was closing, and play it hot. Yeah. So
I bought my first synth when I was like 13, and a Kai K1 I saved for like a year, and it was like a 4-part multi-timbre synth. I had 4 voices anyway, and I was kind of trying to recreate Depeche Mode songs. So how can I make these choral stabs? How can I make this bass sound? I would learn to program with the very limited 4 sample-based oscillators that the K1 had. And over time, I bought a drum machine, and then the time, and I was working with a hardware sequencer at the time. So you could record one track on one MIDI channel, and then you would have to kind of submit that to the gods, and then record another track, and then submit that to the gods, and then they would become one track but on 2 MIDI channels. Then record another one. So if you made a mistake, you get to get rid of everything. But that's what I did from the age of 13 till about 20, just that. I went to work in a music studio to make music for Sega, a company that was making games for Sega, and they spent 40,000 licensing the music for a game. So for the next game, I said, rather than spending 40,000 on the licensing, let's spend 40,000 on the studio and get someone to come and make the music. And I was the guy that went to make the music. So I had all these kits to play with. And then that kind of went tits up as well, and that's when I left, took a lot of the kit, and then I was away, and then Synaesthesia happened, and now I'm here.
Synaesthesia, what's the big riff? What's the synth? People become obsessed about finding these sounds.
Yeah.
Can you reveal to everyone what it
Well,
was?
Synaesthesia was JP8000. So I mean, it was analog.
It was a what?
JP8000.
JP8000.
Yeah. So I know we're talking about pre JP period, but this was JP8000. It was like the first track I made with it. Because before the JP, my favourite synth was maybe the JD800, and you could filter the 4 parts, but the filter movement recorded sysx data rather than MIDI CCs, and because it was like an Atari at the time, the MIDI would get too full and it would choke, so you couldn't actually record smooth filter movements. So the JP8000 was the first synth that I had that recorded automation with CC, so you could get nice fluid automation, and there was no bottleneck with the MIDI. So, but that was one of the sounds, and it was analog pad 1. I still remember this.
Yeah,
because it was like my.
I can still remember the
Yeah,
presets.
it was my go-to for that kind of sound. You'd always tweak the envelopes a little bit to kind of change it a bit. And then over the top of that was an Akai S3000 Super Saw sample, but it wasn't from the JP. It was just a Super Saw-ish type kind of saw wave that I filtered with the Akai S3000 filter, which had its own vibe. So it was layering those two that was the main lead. From my ZTT days, Trevor Horn would always say to me, 3 notes. You need 3 notes in a riff. You need 3 riffs, strong hooks within a track. So I just had that in my mind the whole time. So Synaesthesia was 3 notes. There were 3 strong riffs. So I just that was my thought. And because when I listened to Offshore, it was so simple, 2 notes. And I was like, right, okay, well, I'm going to do it with 3 notes rather than 2. And that was my kind of strategy. And it's what I've stuck with pretty much ever since, really, the 3-note riffs.
We had, I had a few quid in the early 90s from an old job, and I bought I had an S1000, and I ran the whole thing on an Atari 1040, not even a 1040, a 520 to start with. So I basically had an Atari 520, Akai S1000, and most of the stuff was done on that. The early hardcore records.
Pro 24 or something, or
no, sorry, use Cubase on the Cubase to start with.
So it was Cubase, because when I first started out on the Atari, it was Steinberg, but it was Pro 24. It was pre Cubase, you know.
No, mine was This is 9. No, it was definitely the one I was definitely using was Steinberg Cubase, the early version of that, on an Atari 520, which is crazy when you think it's got half a meg of memory, right? And you put the software on top of that. I don't know how many, God knows how we got away with that.
Kilobytes.
Yeah, exactly, right. So I was lucky enough. I could afford an S1000. Not many keyboards. I think I had a lot of Proteus or something. So all of the early hardcore stuff I did in the early 90s was made just with those 2 bits or the 3 or 4 bits of equipment. And we sold enough white labels off the back of our car that I had driving around London. We were selling like 2,000 or 3,000 white labels at the time. That made a few quid, and I literally spent every single penny I ever had on equipment. I didn't do anything else. So by the time we got to the kind of Hilux stage, the 93, 94, although I had no money, when I said my mates were going back from Ibiza and I said I'm going to have to get a day job, I had a pile of equipment. I just had no record deal. So I had equipment still, but I was just lucky that when we got back, we managed to get this record signed to Chicane. And then with that came tons of remixes. We did like Rebecca Ryan, a load of other artists doing this kind of high energy sounds. And I just spent every time I did a remix. In those days, it was, sorry if I'm talking too much, but
no.
So in those days, like the remix fees were like 1,500 quid, 2,000 quid.
That was going to be my question.
Yeah.
Was there? Because I know the remix fees got bigger and bigger in the late 90s, but in that early days where the record companies had money,
they did.
They could,
they did.
You know,
they did.
Yeah.
When we signed Feel It, I remember we got £3,000 advance for the record, and he gave us $2,000 for the publishing, so it's £5,000. It was all the money in the world to us. I thought I could live off that. I could live off that for 6 months, and I could make loads more records. Then we did a remix for an act called Red Eye. The track was called Cut It. It was on Champion, and we did it on spec for Champion Records. And when I took it in, he goes, "Oh, it's really good. I can't afford to pay you much, but I'll give you £1,000." And it was like, wow, £1,000. Okay, we spent a week on it, but still. So that's another bit of equipment, and we just did tons of remixes, lots of singles. And I think the first big advance came with the Ultra High record when we signed it to MCA, and that was a big chunk of money. We got a big chunk of money for the publishing as well, which we signed to Ireland. And instead of buying a car, I just kept buying more and more equipment, and I bought a couple of 3200s, still using an Akai, but I've had two 3200 Akai 3200s then, still using my Atari, I should say. So.
And was it very much sample based, or were you building up now quite a good synth collection?
Yeah, no, I bought a 106, a Jupiter 6. Jupiter 6 was cheap, man. I paid like 300, 400 quid for it. I sold it a couple of years back for 800 quid because it was kind of knackered. You know what they're like. You turn it on and it goes out of tune every 10 minutes. I thought, I'm sick of this nonsense. So I got rid of it for
yeah.
about 800 quid or something. But no, I just kept buying synths. I had a 106, a Juno 2, as I remember. Called Prophecy, was it a Prophecy little thing? MS-20, and sorry, MS-10 I had, which I used.
Right.
All the records sound the same because they're all using the same synths, right? You got one sound on each synth,
Yeah.
right? And that was enough.
Well,
that was kind of enough.
There wasn't much. There was an S750 sampler. There was two 101s. There was a Oberheim OBXA. There was a Nord Lead, JP8000, and a bunch of other stuff. But
Is this 97?
Yeah. I would say 70% of it, 80% of it was driven by Roland, though.
But the JP8000 for me has probably been the most. I don't know, just for getting inspiration, it just really kind of fires me up. So I can sit down with a Supersaw now. I've got JP just right behind me here, and I don't get bored of that sound. So it goes to a Lexicon reverb that I have, which has got a beautiful chorus and a basic delay, and I can just, that's it for me. That's inspiration. Like guitarists will have a favorite guitar to write on. That's my favorite synth to write on, or the Nord Lead, which I've got to my right here. I mean, those two synths, they get me going really. So interesting story about the JP8000 was there was a music shop in Oxford called Professional Music Technology, PMT. And I'd gone in there, and it's a guy who was working with Andy as Olmec Heads. And he was like, Steve, just got this JP8000, and do you want to have a go? It just blew me away. But I said, there's no way I can afford this. It was £600 at the time. I wasn't getting paid. He said, well, just take it home. Just take it home and bring me 50 quid every time you can afford to. And
like a drug dealer.
And this is what I did. So I went back with 50 quid every kind of month or so until I eventually paid it off. But if I hadn't done that...
we had a music shop again in Belfast, and they said, look, say the synth was 300 quid, said lay down 100 quid and then just come up.
And
I lived 20 miles away. I'd have to get a bus with the 50 pound and go in and go, there you go, and then he would write down the book. But they didn't know me from Adam. They just seen me in and out of the shop several times and knew it was like mad.
Well, you've got a very trusting face there, haven't you?
Well, I still owe him 50 quid. What other sort of equipment did you have? What desks did you have at those days? Drum machines? Was it all samples?
So I had a little Mackie, 16-channel Mackie.
Yep.
I think the first one I had was maybe just 8 channels, and I got 16, and eventually I moved up to a Soundcraft Ghost as time went on. The studio that I left, that I said couldn't afford to pay me, and said just take some equipment, so I took the Lexicon PCM80. So I got the PCM80.
Nice take.
I took, we had a TL Audio C1 compressor. There was an Eventide H3000. The 106, they had a 106, but I didn't like it. I never used it on a track, even though I had access to it all the time. And I left. I said, no, I don't want that. I can't bother with that, because now there was a fortune.
Space Brothers, very famous organ sound. Is it a Korg?
The lead sound.
Yeah,
it's actually a Novation bass station. It's an organ bass played in the wrong octave.
Right. Okay.
That's all it is. There's a couple of, I think on Forgiven I layered it a bit. So there's there's a Nord lead behind it, which sounds a bit richer. But the original one on Shine, I think it's preset 21. It's just an organ. If you play it low down, it sounds like a Robin S kind of bass, right?
Right. Okay.
And I just played it quite high up, and that riff was never meant. But that riff was never meant to be a thing. It was when I played
like
it,
a placeholder.
It was like a little sequence in the background of the chorus. It was never going to be a big riff. And then as we were mixing it, we started turning it up more and more and more and more. I thought, that's quite hooky, that bit, isn't it? And it's like it was just meant to be a little sequence. And then it ended up being this thing. So
it was talking to Steve Helstrip about his Synaesthesia and El Nino. When you look at these riffs, he said he worked with Trevor Horns in Trevor Horns studios and stuff, and Trevor Horn said to him, "No, the riff no more than 3 notes and 3 hooks per song." He said that was my. And he said I heard Chicane Offshore, and it was like ding 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 ding. He said it was 2 notes. Well, look, I'll add a 3rd note, and again with Shine, they're really rudimentary. But they're so hooky. Do you think
they're very? It's very difficult to write it though. You know that.
Yeah.
You can't do those every day. That's the mad thing, right?
Yeah. And gee, I mean, I also find that, from our records, your records, Paul Van Dyk's and stuff, For an Angel, the riff sounds were different, the riffs were different, but they were all hooky and memorable. And do you think that's been lost these days?
Yeah, 100%, because everyone's got the same gear now, right? We've all got Serum and Diva and stuff like that. So, and the Super Saw thing, as much as it's a lovely sound, it's just used way too much. So, I mean, I didn't buy a JP8000 deliberately because everyone else had one. So my synth that I would use if I wanted something like that was my Jupiter 6. In Love Shines Through, the kind of fast arpeggio in the background of that is a Jupiter 6. The sort of main sort of slower eighth plinky one is a Supernova, and then behind it you hear the kind of 16th kind of arpeggio that comes in. That's a Jupiter 6. So I deliberately shied away from the 8000 because I just thought everyone's going to sound like Airwave.
Do you think nowadays things have become too complicated, where the melodies are too meandering and not hooky enough? Or what was it about those records in those days that just made them so special?
For me, it was, I mean, like, some of the tracks that you've made and Paul Van Dyk and Ferry Corsten, we would have these special tracks 3 or 4 every single week. You'd go out to a club and you hear them for the first time. What's this? And everything was new. Everyone had their own sound and identity. I didn't know who these people were at all back then, but over the years, obviously, I've come to know who they were. I'm like, oh, now it's all making sense. And you start to hear sounds that certain producers would use, and you start to realise, oh, it's because they had this synth, or they sampled their own kick drums from here, or they were doing things their own way. I came through with very little equipment, really. And I know we're talking about the pre-JP8000 days, but once the JP8000 did come along, that transformed things again. But before that, I was relying mostly on samples. So even before I had a sampler, I had a Creative Labs AWE32, which allowed you to sample into memory any sound that you could put into the computer. So around about the boy band time kind of period of my life, I was also writing for a computer magazine. And I was able to blag sample CDs from Time and Space. So I had pretty much every sample CD that they'd released. I was writing for Future Music, so they were chucking software at me and please write some words about this, because that's the only way they had to market their products was through reviews, because advertising was so expensive for them. So I was able to collect all these sample CDs, and I'd listen to a whole CD, like 60 minutes of audio, and take one sound. Take another 60 minutes of audio, take one sound. So I had my collection of sounds that I used. But it still wasn't quite doing it for me until I got like a TX81Z and I got the lately bass and certain sounds that just defined that era of music. And I was like, oh, right, now I'm starting to sound like what I'm listening to on the radio. But now everyone's got the same equipment, the same draw, the same reverb, the same compressors. It's great that it's democratized in the sense that people can have a go and do something. But for creativity, I think it's limiting people's creativity by having too much choice. So that's my kind of take on it.
Everything was Paul Van Dyk's records, your records, Chicane records, our records, the Space Brothers. They all sounded different. They weren't repeating the same tropes.
The stuff we can do now so quickly, and the thing, just time stretching drums and trying to get things. You spent days trying to listen to stuff, and then you got it to a place where you got some loops in, and you go, nah, that's shit. No. You start again.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that were incredibly difficult for us are now very easy for people who want to get into music. Making music has never been easier. I think Rick Rubin said something very, very interesting, where he said, if you write music for an audience, it's commerce. And if you write music for yourself, it's artistry.
Right.
We live in a society currently where everybody is looking at everybody else. There's this everyone's best life is on Instagram, and I'm comparing myself to him, and I should be here, and really all of that needs to be set aside, and you just do what you do. And it's the most important part of the grounding of building a cohesive career. And also, we're getting very bogged down into the problems that streaming has presented artists. And they're twofold. One, obviously, 0.0.0.3 of a cent is biblically stupid. Mm-hmm. But probably the even more stupid part is that instead of just pressing play and it registering as a stream, you have to stream for 30 seconds. So that one fact has changed the way people are writing music. Front-loaded choruses, the whole 9 yards, crushed. So because we have developed attention spans of a gnat, you know.
Yeah.
So all of those things aren't really helping. You've got to try and forget all that as artists, you know. And you've got to try and develop that. You know, there's so few people coming through that are individual. Probably the likes of Fred again and a few other people are the most people that I can think of who are themselves and they're doing that thing, you know.
Yeah. Do you believe you were more creative back then or not?
It's hard to pinpoint, really. I think I was. I was very prolific between like 99 and 2005, but I would stay up till 8 in the morning. You know, I mean, I remember getting a call from my manager at the time saying, we just had a call from Chicane's manager. What they want you to remix Saltwater. I'm like, what? This was like, what why? You know, but you need to have it finished in like 5 days, and they want a club mix as well as an ambient mix. So I would work.
Why did this happen? Why could nobody plan? It was always, they need it in 48 hours, and you're like, why can they not?
So I would literally work like 5 or 6 days, but sleep for 2 hours per day. So you're exhausted. And taking all those kind of, because you're so exhausted, I believe it kind of opens up creativity or openness to creativity, which is why I always work best on the night time, and you know the brain starts to shut down a little bit. So from a creativity perspective, that's what works for me, and that's what worked for me back then.
They were very different times as well.
Yeah.
So but this Balearic sound, none of it was premeditated, none of it was, you know, let's do this like this. It just, that's how I sound.
How did you feel around that time, around the sort of 97, the 90? I mean, this explosion of us, you, Space Brothers types of, you know, these big Paul Van Dyke, Foreign Angel, you know, these, we didn't realize at the time this is a really definitive era for dance
Halcyon
music.
days.
Yeah, halcyon days, exactly. And you were flying out to Ibiza. You were very much in the Ibiza vibe and stuff. Robbie was going out and doing a few dates. I didn't sort of hit the island until probably, we shot Everyday Video. 1999 was the first time, I think, I was on the island. So looking back, do you miss those days? Do you have fond memories or bad memories, or, you know?
It's very hard to have fun at the time. I think there was slight paranoia of trying to chase the next big record, you know. There was that element and not really enjoying that process. There was also not really realizing just how all-encompassing that was compared to how it is now as well, because it was everything. It was the culture. There was no social media. The telephones were in their infancy. Going out and clubbing and music was right at the top of the list for everything. And it's now probably 15 or something. Which hasn't had an effect upon everyone's careers, you know.
You were very brave in that you had several different names.
Mm-hmm.
Why was that? And was it somebody telling you, look, do a name here? And you were signed to every label probably in London at one stage.
At some stage, it wasn't really bravery. It was necessity, because we really did have a mad kind of spurt of a year or two just writing so much material. From memory, we wrote Someone, Shine, Every Time, and one of the others all in a week.
Jesus.
And like And then, so it was like a mad time after we got back to Ibiza in '97 or something. That it was just like it was non-stop, not finished production, but the tracks were pretty
We're
much
there.
formed.
And did no label come to you and go, look, we'll allow you to do all these different aliases, just do it under our umbrella here, and we'll get everything?
Yeah, there was a few suggestions of that, but nothing that felt right. It was more like they really wanted to tie you down. It just didn't feel right. It was like they wanted everything. They wanted kind of like the name. You couldn't do remixes and other names. You couldn't work with other people. It was like that's way too restrictive, you know. So the plan was whichever label we were having the most success with, we weren't going to be stupid about it. We were going to focus on it. And in the end, the Space Brothers started having the bigger hits, not Chakra, because Chakra to us was always a slightly deeper sound, a little bit cooler. Yeah. So as soon as the Space Brothers started having top 40s, we focused on that. We made an album.
It was on the radio. You could travel from Scotland all the way down to the south of France, and you would listen to dance music and trance on the radio on every station. It was a very unique time.
Every small town had its club, and they were just the touring DJs were coming into those clubs, and everyone had just this huge appetite. Give me the music. What is this music? And you go back to the charts back in those days, and you just look down and go, wow, there was some mega records made back in that year.
It's a proper zeitgeist, isn't it? The last one, I think.
Yeah, I think it's the last one.
I think for me, my introduction to dance music was '91. Was the hardcore scene. That for me was a proper zeitgeist, because it was walking into a rain dance tent, in the middle of Jenkins Lane in East London, and seeing Moby playing Go on a keyboard, going. It was mind blowing. I mean, I'd never seen anything like it, and I'd never seen the togetherness of people before. I'm so used to seeing football fights and stuff and then suddenly to go into a tent full of people all hugging each other was just amazing. So that was the first zeitgeist, and I do think the big trance thing that came along in '97 for me felt similar to the hardcore moment, because trance is so euphoric, a bit like the early hardcore, the '91, '92 hardcore sound. There's big breakdown, there's big strings and stuff. So for me, I lost it a little bit in the middle, like '93, '94 was a bit, but as soon as I started going to Cream and heard what Hooky was doing and stuff, that's when it was just, it's an amazing time. You look back at it now and you don't realise, well, you didn't realise at the time, this is a special moment. It really is.
No, I wish at the time we could have realised, this is it was just our lives. It was just what we were doing, and we were all kind of and it just felt it was growing and growing and growing, and sort of like, oh, you can be on, Radio 1's A lists, with your record that you've made in, Belfast and stuff, and it's kind of like, oh, is it that easy? And it's like, no, it's not that easy.
The one guy that really did know that it was a special moment was Jerry Dickens at Hoochins, because when we were chatting about messing about doing other stuff, he said to us, look, the only place you guys should be is in the studio. You need to really concentrate. We're like, oh no, I'm going away for a few months. No. You need to be in the studio all the time, because this is a special moment.
And you still have the passion. You can still every day sit down and go, right, I need to write something, and still play with chords and still get in meld, and you still have that passion. You haven't got 30 years later, why am I doing this? Or you still have the drive.
I am still extremely passionate about it. I do it also. I've always done it just for myself, but it's also everything. I always stress needs to be emotive. The music is meant to connect to someone, and you feel what that's all about. I don't know what music is when it doesn't do that. The older you get, the more you become more conscious that the main currency in life is happiness. That is your currency. It's not followers, people. Pay attention. Okay? It's happiness, I've made some money, live in a nice house, very, very, very grateful to be in a position to be able to wander up to the studio and do what I do. But also there's a reason for that, and the reason is that I am an utterly relentless individual, and I've been working on I've got some tracks I've been working on for years
and you
years.
still go back, yeah.
They're still not done. And how I got to this place. So people would say, "Oh, yeah, Nick, you know, you've been really lucky, you know." And I would go, "Well, it wasn't really luck. I was very fortunate to have a talent where I could hear music, I could feel music, and the actual genre that I was interested in, most people could interface in. You know, I could have been minimalist techno, which doesn't really interface with the general public. So, what Brian Adams would call, he's a punter musician, right? I'm a little bit punter musician to a certain degree, but what I mean by that is that I understand certain melodies make people a bit of a Pied Piper thing, you know. So I'm fortunate to have that, right? And then I was just utterly relentless with it.
Right.
I get tired and I get irritable about where we are with the thing. We've elevated people to a platform of where they shouldn't be. And then the thing starts to get destabilized and it's all over. So the process is that, and again, it's commerce, right? So it's people watching some superstar DJs. Next minute, I've got some followers, or I've faked some followers, and I'm doing some videos, and I'm doing this. Next minute, I'm a DJ. Next minute, I'm a brand, and we're doing all this in the space of a couple of years, you know. And it's not real. It's not sustainable. It's not where it's at.
Dave Clark has come out and said it's embarrassing being a DJ now.
It is,
and it is.
It is. We used to be characters who were sort of a silhouette behind a box, you know, in the corner of the club, you know. There is a whole kind of, and look, life changes, yeah. That's the one thing that happens, yeah. I'm not going to say it's good or bad, but there's a whole offshoot of DJing that's gone into performance art and buffoonery, shall we say. Kids making records on laptops. That's just the fucking beginning, you know. To write records which have longevity, which last, not just sonically and technically, emotionally, and you still work. That is the skill of great production, you know. It takes years and years and years to be able to do something with any substance that's going to still be around. You know it, Chris, and I know it.
I mean, the biggest takeaway from this interview with you, especially, it wasn't so much about what equipment I had. What you are very, very passionate is. The bottom line is you have to have songwriting. You have to write something that is emotional, that is connecting, and that will last. It's not just, you know, layer up this and layer up that and put a compressor on. You know, it is 101 is get the song correct, get the emotion correct, get the riff that is going to engage the listener, and everything else will fall in place.
It's kind of how it's kind of pretty much it, yeah.
Where are you guys now? How do you feel where your career is now? What's, you know, you're doing a lot of gigs, you know, we've played together and stuff and a few things.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had a big break from gigs, and that was really a really good thing to do, because coming back to it now, when I play now, I enjoy it more than ever, and also I remember the things the next day now, right, as opposed to in the 90s. You know what it's like, right? So it's nice waking, like, you know, playing Belfast last weekend.
You had a
nice
good one?
Waking up. Did have a good one, and it was lovely waking up on a Sunday morning and walking around Belfast with the sun shining. It was beautiful, with a completely clear head. I walked down Fountain Lane, had a pint of Guinness in Fountain Lane before my flight. It is Fountain Lane, isn't it? Just off the other side of Student Square. So I would never have done those things, you know, 20 years ago, because I'd still be at the party somewhere, you know. So it's great coming back and remembering the night before. So I'm enjoying playing more now than ever, actually. So
our day party's just the most brilliant thing ever as well. You're finished by 10 o'clock, and it's like
best thing in the world. Well, that's why we love Space for the first time we went there, right? Because it started at 10 in the morning, and it's all over by 6 in the evening. That's it. Going to bed.
I'm a little bit older now. I want to go to bed at 10 o'clock these days.
when you get your DJ schedule in, you're like,
Yeah.
I can't play it. I can't play at 1 o'clock.
I love these daytime
Day part.
events.
Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely. I've got one on Saturday, and I'm finished by 10 o'clock.
Yeah, it's perfect.
This is perfect. This will do me. I can be in bed by 11. Well, look, best of luck with everything, Nick, and thank you very much for joining us in Sonic Academy. I hope to speak to you very, very soon.
Good to speak to you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and maybe get to see you soon at some gigs.
Hope so. Nice one. Cheers, Chris.
Thank you very
Take
much.
care.
Cheers. Speak
Thanks,
soon.
man.
Bye. Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Thank you, Steve, for joining us. This is Interviews with Everyone, and we hope to see you all very,
Amazing.
very soon.
Take care, guys.